This is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. And here is your host, freelance creative director and creative circus department head, Dan Balser.
Yes, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. We're here with Laura Fegley, and got a name I've heard for so long. And we went to the same school, graduated about a year separated, and we hadn't met until about an hour ago.
Yeah.
Which is
how was
cool.
that?
It's kind of crazy. So Laura, very quickly, if you haven't done your homework and followed up, she graduated, like I said, from Portfolio Center back in '93, a year after I did. Before that, Bowling Green State University in Ohio.
Go Falcons.
Weiss Witten. There was never a Carol in there? Was there another
There
name?
was Carol before I came. The first iteration was Weiss Witten Carol Stagliano.
Okay. Weiss Witten Stagliano, Merkley and Partners, Merkley Newman Hardy, Cliff Freeman and Partners, freelance for a while, J. Walter Thompson, BBH New York, and now executive creative director, not in New York.
Not in New York.
In Minneapolis, Minnesota, at Colle McVoy as executive creative director overseeing a group. And welcome to school. Does it feel like you're back at Portfolio
It feels
Center?
I was like looking at the work on the walls. I'm like, oh my God, did my work make the wall?
Oh, I was explaining that to students. So like people that maybe gone to the circus that don't realize in the old days back at PC. I'm going to tell this story for listeners because it was different. So panel, as you recall, we called critique.
Yes.
And you'd go in, everything had to be mounted on a 16 by 20 chrome coat, which is like a glossy stock paper. And that was basically the first round of judging for the student show. And the point was, if the teachers thought your stuff should be in the show, they would, I'm doing air quotes, they would pull your work.
Yeah.
They'd pull it and put it on the paper. And then by the time you're in fifth or sixth quarter, your objective was to have your whole panel pulled.
Yes.
So you'd walk out of there with your hands up in the air and like, oh my God, they pulled the whole thing.
And then you'd all talk about like how many did you get on the wall?
Yeah, and then it would go on the wall. Oh, and then the stuff that was going to be in the show would go on the wall from the stuff that was pulled. And then we'd have a student award show, and the stuff that won gold, silver, and bronze would get like gold, silver, and bronze stickers on the wall for a whole quarter. So the student show was mounted on the wall. It was a pretty cool setup.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah, so now we just have the whole show up in the theater every quarter, and we do it now every 2 quarters instead of the way it used to be. It used to be very competitive.
I wonder if I should go back. I should start doing that at the agency. Just like once a quarter, just pick the best work and have like a little competition amongst the creatives.
There's also an award for like best book. I think there was like a best portfolio.
There was
There's an interesting, getting the philosophy of this, and maybe we can talk about this because this isn't even on my list of questions. But like the different philosophies of a competitive versus a collaborative environment. And I think that Portfolio Center, I have nothing bad to say about my time at Portfolio Center. Nothing.
No,
I mean, the best people, incredible 2 years. It really set me up for everything I've ever done. But there was a slight, I think, competitive component in that the work you showed at panel was to win an award. We still do award shows, but I think it changed the way I think we approach how we present our work at presentations by saying, like, instead of saying, here's my work, let's talk about it, like, here's my work, what's good enough to win. And then by giving people this sort of competitive construct. And that we've had instructors here that had classes that were like, there's a zero-sum game. There's a winner and everyone else loses. So is this a familiar conversation or way of a philosophy? Are there creative departments that you found in your career, let's turn this into a question, where you find people are a little bit more competitive trying to win, or do you find there are places where they're more generous, and is that something that happens in the real world?
Yeah, I mean, I think the agencies that I've seen that work the best creatively are the ones that are both collaborative and competitive. I think luckily everything's, because everything's shifting so much, there's less sort of like just an art director, copywriter ownership. So that makes it a little bit easier to kind of like let other people in on your idea. I think a lot of agencies at one point went from like even award shows, like they started putting the agency name and didn't even put everybody's name on it, which I don't know that you want a little swagger coming out of making great work, like, yeah, I did that. I want to be able to put this on my refrigerator. It's funny, we were just having this conversation about this at our agency, because some of the younger people were actually asking for more moments of competition with each other. Like they all love each other. They all get along really well. But I think, what we were trying to do is give them more of like ownership moments where it's like, only you were working on this. This is yours.
Right.
And they're like, that's great, but I want more moments where I'm going up against somebody, which is, I think, why they love pitches so much. Because it's like, there's that moment of friendly competition.
It's so interesting. The grass is always greener because my first job, yours was at a small place.
Yeah.
My first job was at a gigantic, massive megacorp and 250 creatives and 10 teams of 25. And there were times when even in our group, we felt like we were up against the ACDs and we felt like we were always in sort of a jump ball situation. And it was morale destroying.
Yeah.
And I feel like when I moved to my second job, the ownership was a great thing. But it's fascinating to hear that people feel like when they don't have to win, they might not feel that somebody nipping at their heels to push themselves, right? That's kind of what it's about, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they want to push each other more, which is I think why everybody loves pitches so much, because pitches are tough, but I think there's also the best idea wins. And
Right.
and you realize I've only been working this a couple weeks.
Does it though?
At least what you take in, I think.
Is it best? Okay, what you take? Right, with the eight, the eight.
Not the pitch isn't necessarily best idea wins, because
Right,
I've
exactly.
lost many pitches that we should have for sure won.
No, but I think that's true. I think that what gets out of the door from the agency is almost always the best idea for sure.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure.
And I think there's, and I love that sort of look on, especially because our creatives get along so well. That look of when somebody else puts an idea on the wall that's like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say earlier. That's what I was going to say. Like, we were competitive in school because when someone won, you're like, that asshole. But like, you're mad because you didn't do it.
You're good jealous.
Yeah, you're jealous of them. You're not like, it's not really, you know what I find now though? I find a lot of students now feel like since that person won that I lost and I suck. I think that's a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the biggest struggle of being a creative is just that walking that line of your confidence, because like
Did you struggle with that ever?
Oh, absolutely. School, I think I was okay at first. I was a little, luckily I had a really good friend group here who was really supportive. I had a couple of art directors that were really like supportive, and it just helped bolster my confidence. But my first job when I went to Weissman and Stagliano was 40 people. All of my accounts, I was the only copywriter on them. Like it was sink or swim all on me. Right. And I froze a little bit. Like, I managed to get the work done and did some nice work. But
did you freeze because you weren't good enough then to always be good? Or did you freeze because you felt this weird pressure?
I froze because I didn't think I was good. I'm sure I was plenty good enough. I didn't think I was good enough.
But not everyone right out of school. As where you sit now as an executive creative director, you know that there's going to be sort of a lower batting average for younger people.
Yeah,
right?
And I think that was if I had known at the moment just to be taking notes on leadership, because my boss at the time was fantastic, but that was kind of his first kind of running an agency sort of thing. And he was just like, he yelled a bit, and, there was a lot of me crying in the bathroom.
Oh, wow.
There was and I think I wish I had been a person with more built-in confidence that it didn't hit me so hard.
Is he a writer?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I'm a very straight shooting creative director. Like I'm not a coddler. I'm not a hugger. But I like to cut to the chase. Mm-hmm. And I sometimes see that look. I'm like, okay, how do I turn this so I'm motivating this person, demoting them, sending them into a cave.
That's so interesting to me because sitting here talking to you, and the regular listeners of this podcast will know that so far we've already covered 2 topics where you're taking the exact opposite position that I've had, and it's totally right on too. Like the idea that not having competition can make people want that, and that I've often said that I wish if I had life to do over again in my career, I don't think I made mistakes where I worked and the guys I worked for, a couple women, but I'd never worked for a copywriter, creative director, and I kind of wish I'd always had that guy or woman to push me, to send me back to my desk. And now you're telling me that you had that, and it was a hill to climb.
Well, I mean, and trust me, the things I take away from that, which I use with the writers now, like he would be like, I want you to come back with 7 pages of headlines, single spaced. Yeah. You just write, because I think he was trying to help me through my fear.
Right. Well, this is what I'm talking about.
He's like, you need to write your way out of it.
I don't even know if it was fear. Well, you had fear. I can't tell you what you were feeling.
Yeah.
But I think that this expectation that you're going to graduate and then you're going to have this high batting average. I remember working on this project with a teacher in school once, thinking they're going to sit down and just be amazing. It's like, no, there's a lot of dirty, ugly, messy, creative failures that's part of the deal.
Yeah.
Right? You can't, I don't know.
Or it could have been me getting used to, I think the toughest part about, we have a really fun job, but the flip side of this really amazing job, where we just get to be creative all day and be smart people, is that most of our job is being told no. Like most of our job is being told, is 80% of the stuff getting pulled off the wall. And I think that's the hardest sort of callus to build as a creative is just knowing that's just part of the process, is being told no, until you get a yes, and being able to have the the wherewithal to get through that, and also the endurance to keep coming back after.
Right. That's really important.
I think if there's you look at other people in other departments, and they're like, oh, this person I'm so worried, this creative looks so destroyed, and I'm like, they'll be fine tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Like we get, if we're passionate enough about what we do, we get upset, but the good ones mourn quickly and get up the next day to be told no again.
I think that's exactly right. So you talked about the boss that sent you back to write 7 pages single spaced.
Which I'm so glad he taught me to do that.
Oh, there's no question. I kind of wish I had that tough love too early on. And I feel like not having that, I wonder what it would have been like if I had been pushed. The only person I remember pushing me in my first job was my partner. He's the only one who sent me back to my office. He's like, this is good, but you can do better. Keep writing. Compare the traits of bosses that you've had who were the best CDs that you worked for, and why were they the best ones?
One of the most interesting CDs I worked for was Cliff Freeman. Mm-hmm. So Cliff was really involved in the work, even though his name was on the the wall of the agency. When you were working on something, you workshopped it with Cliff.
That's cool.
And Cliff was so funny in that. Cliff was all instinct. Like he knew how to execute the crap out of stuff. And he had this instinct in him, which I think it was based on internal strategy, but it was really just a gut though, which I think he was a really good, learn to go with your gut. It's probably right. And then learn how to justify your gut. But you'd be working on a comedy script and you would be writing on the set, as we were trying things, that wasn't that funny. You would rewrite new stuff. And when you were presenting scripts originally, you'd be like, well, that's not funny. This actually needs to be a dachshund instead of a basset hound, because dachshunds are funnier. And actually people that had worked at Cliff Freeman for a long time, they were keeping this huge list of what Cliff had deemed funny or not funny.
So really funny.
But it was super random. What's the difference between a dachshund and a basset hound? I don't know, but a dachshund's funnier.
They move more humorously.
And Cliff knew. He would just go, not funny.
It's there's such a cool combination of art and commerce too, because you said strategy, but the gut is about what's going to resonate.
Yeah.
And what resonates is always strategic. And
yeah. So really he was just that was just such a great, just go with your gut first, then figure out how to justify it. And then I think working, and I didn't get to work with him directly, but a few times a year he would roll through and inspire me as John Hegarty. Sir John Hegarty. Yeah. He is another executor. He was very into the detail and the nuance of everything. And one of the great things that John would always kind of prod me on is that you have to have things happening in your outside life that are feeding your creativity. And he would hard
to do in that lifestyle.
I know. Well, that used to drive me crazy though, because he would come into town and he'd be like, Laura, what, he wanted to know that I was in an all-girl ukulele band or something. And I'm like, I'm paying for your vineyard right now. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. But it was a good reminder though, too, get your head, sometimes you're not getting better work by stepping on the gas so much. Sometimes you'll get better work by stepping off.
Do you have a good, sort of gut instinct sort of thing? I mean, is that something that as a creative director, you can see a good... Okay, so you're not. The listener doesn't know. She's nodding affirmatively. Yes.
Affirmative.
The other part of that question is, how are you at a team or someone presenting a bunch of stuff to you, laid out on the table or on a screen or on a document, whatever, going through everything and seeing something in there that they missed? Is that something that you have been good at it?
I love doing that.
Yeah,
that's my favorite.
That's
thing.
The best thing. Right?
That's the best thing. Then you feel like you've earned your salary for the day.
Right.
When you do that,
that's kind of your job. So
yeah, I'm super. I am a big believer in gut. I'm also, which I'll kind of tell people that work for me, full transparency. I'm not. I know there's some creative directors that let's keep dabbling with some of these different directions for a while. I am very much this is the one that I think is right. I want you to continue to work on that. I'm very decisive about that stuff. But my full transparency is that I might be wrong on that. But whatever, I got to try. I'd rather go out on a limb and go after this idea full fledged than kind of be wishy washy about a bunch of stuff.
Right, absolutely. I mean, have you ever had an experience that I have in class? Well, I try to encourage students to do where something that they really liked wasn't working, but they believed in it and they could turn it into something.
I always tell the creatives if they are really passionate about something and I'm not seeing it, make me see it.
Yeah, okay, good.
You can keep bringing this back. I'm not a client.
But if it's different,
huh?
If it's evolved.
Yeah, if it's evolved. Yeah, don't just keep bringing back the same thing.
Right.
I'm not seeing it. You need to keep working this till I understand. The brilliant, because I've had ideas like that where it's like, I see the brilliance, you're just not seeing it yet. Sometimes this needs to be executed more, written out better, like whatever.
Yeah. So, okay, we talked about creative directors, but of the jobs you've had, what were the best? What's your memorable sort of best? Taking Colle McVoy out of it because you're there now.
Yeah. I can't say. Oh, okay.
or you can, obviously you can say that, but why? And part of this is I want to frame this to people that are kind of navigating a career. And for you personally, where did you find satisfaction, growth, or happiness? What role and point of your career so far has been fulfilling for you?
When I went to BBH was the happiest. That was a real like eye opener. I'd worked. It's the first time. Not the first time. Let's just put it this way. It's the first time I'd had any kind of work-life balance, for one, which is a huge thing.
And what level were you at that point?
I was a GCD when I went there. So it's hard for me to tell. Like, was it just because I had finally reached a certain level that I could, but I think as an agency in general, it was both an agency that had, everybody had the shared vision of excellence.
Oh, that's very important.
Everybody wanted to make the same caliber of work, which is incredible. Especially when I hate when making great creative work comes down to the creative department. The whole, to be an agency that makes great creative work, the entire company has to know that that's what you do.
That's very cool.
Everybody's part of doing that. And BBH is one of those, every single person in the building knows that they're there to make great creative work and have great creative ideas.
Is that something that someone can know without working there? Is that something, in other words, if someone's basically interviewing or looking for a first place to work, is that something that how can you tell when an agency has a commitment to doing great creative work? It's always in the work.
A lot of times it's the work.
The work, obviously.
Yeah, they make great creative work. Like it didn't just happen. It wasn't like you can't. I don't think creatives alone can like muscle that through.
Right. In other words, if the work's not good, the reason is not because the creatives are necessarily hacks. It's because the culture isn't supporting it.
I mean, I think there's amazing creatives in every single agency in this country.
Exactly.
I think a lot of people that are some of the most awarded creatives in the world will also acknowledge, like, I got lucky. I was in the right place, right time.
Right. That's right. A very good point.
So you need a support system, and the support system can't just be your creative director.
What's your job now? How's your job evolved? How's it different than when you would sit down and write an ad? You think about advertising. What do you feel like is your job at this point as an executive creative director?
Now that executive creative directors in New York are more kind of just over a few pieces of business. In Minneapolis, it's more I'm the lieutenant.
Okay.
So, my boss does a lot of kind of client relationship stuff. I'm in charge of the department.
Okay.
That means really boring administrative stuff like resourcing and making sure that we've got the right number of headcount and all.
Do you keep track of who's working on what and workloads and that kind of stuff?
We have a person that does, but she talks with me all the time about like, how we, and that's a lot of my job too, is trying to figure out who's working on what and rotating people off accounts. But I think the bigger thing is just trying to make sure that I meet with all of the people running the accounts, finding the opportunities in I can help when there is a moment where like this seems like an opportunity at the agency. And those are usually the pieces of business I'll double down on for a short period of time. So I usually have like 3 or 4 different projects in the agency that I'm very hands-on for a small period of time.
So let me try to imagine the scenario. So the group and the team are working on basically what the assignment is. And maybe you'll come in and say, you know what, this is actually something we could do this for. This maybe you hadn't seen this because I'm looking at it from another angle.
Yes.
Like what if we do this experiential thing with it, or the documentary series or something that comes out of sort of just a different perspective from being in the field to kind of like in the house up looking at the field sort of thing. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and we've also, just to kind of give a little structure to that too, I also started... We do these things with accounts now. We called the agency is all about helping brands find their next. So we do these what's next sessions. So basically, if you just do what the clients asked you to do, you're going to get exactly what you expect. You're not necessarily going to see the opportunities for them. So this is a moment once a year when we kind of take a step back on brands and go put aside everything you know about like what the assignments are for this year, what annual planning brought, and go knowing this brand's business problems. What's the thing we should be doing for them?
That first part's really important.
Yeah.
That first part's really important. Knowing this brand's business problems. Understanding what their pains are.
That's the key. That's the key to everything, is knowing this brand's business problems And then what would we do? And sometimes what we would do is exactly the thing they've asked us to do. Sometimes it's completely different.
Right.
And then we can decide what do we do with this information?
Right.
Do we go
Sometimes
share
they
this
know,
with them?
yeah. Sometimes they know.
Yeah.
But sometimes they can't see it because they're not looking at it that way. That's really important. I think that's important even for stuff in portfolios, like solving real business problems. So we switch gears, talk about geography.
Yeah.
What do you miss most about New York? You told me at lunch.
My friends.
That's it. How has your approach to the work changed now that you're in the Midwest? Someone had asked this at Forum, but I'd written it down.
Yeah. I think I said at the Forum, I was kind of shocked at, I hadn't left at 5 ever in my career.
I love this part. Go
yeah.
ahead. Say it again.
And I think it was my second day there. I was looking around the creative department and I literally didn't see anybody. And I was panicked that I was missing a creative department meeting.
Right.
And I realized it was the summertime too. Everybody had just gone home. Like, normally there's a bunch of people that have some stuff and they're sticking around or whatever. But just that, I'm going to have to get a hobby because I don't know what to do with my evenings.
Have you gotten one?
Well, I have an 8-month-old.
That's a hobby.
That's a hobby.
That's a hardcore hobby.
Who
has him right now?
My mom.
Okay, that's perfect.
Yeah. So my mom moved to Minnesota. She's helping
that's
me
awesome.
With them. Yeah.
That's so great. All right, so we're winding up because I know you have a flight to catch. I have 2 quick questions for you. What personal trait of yours, what is it about Laura Fegley that has served you best so far in the career?
Ooh. I can't. I think there's 2 kinds of people. I think one kind of person can't hold who they are back. They just kind of bubble. It's like with a fire hose. Mm-hmm. And then they kind of look back and go, I wish I had dialed it back a little bit. And then there's some people that are super measured. And that serves them really well. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of more the first one.
Yeah, I don't think it's really measured.
No, I'm not measured at all.
Do you regret it? Do you sometimes feel like you got yourself in trouble?
Oh, all the time. At least once a day, I walk out of something and I'm like, oh, why was I so full on that one? But I do.
What's the cost? No, but what's the cost? Do you think, honestly?
Well, and honestly, I think the thing that I need to do is learn how to cut down that doubt about why was I so full on? There's if there's lessons I can learn, I'm oh, you should have maybe handled this a little bit differently. Yes, that's worth reflecting on. Mm-hmm. But I would love to be able to just kill that part of myself that regrets being myself in my fullest.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, we don't have enough time for therapy.
I think it's a good. Yeah. I think that's one of the things that students would say if they like me. That's one of the things they like. I'm not saying they like me or like that part of it, but I don't know. Measured is this is constructive to me. Yeah. This is the sort of forward stuff is there's no doubt and there's no ambiguity and there's no hidden agenda. You'll know what my agenda is.
The compliment I hear the most is not that I'm hearing compliments all the time, but is that I like that you're a straight shooter. Yeah,
I think that's wonderful. And then knowing what you know now, mm-hmm. if you could go back to Portfolio Center '94, the day you left, what would you whisper in young Laura's ear? What do you wish you'd known?
Honestly, that just taps into life regrets of I wish I had, when I moved to New York, I got a bunch of friends there and I loved my apartment and I loved my life and I just didn't leave. And I wish I had been more open to trying living in other countries.
Interesting.
That's my biggest regret is I haven't worked overseas.
Go to London. Yeah.
I had a lot of friends that worked in London and Singapore, all over the place in Australia. And that's just when I look back and oh, what do I feel like? I lived in New York for 20 years. I experienced a lot,
right,
I had a lot of I had a lot of stuff experienced,
yeah.
But I didn't get to experience I traveled a lot, but I didn't get to experience really working and living in another
that would be really
culture.
Cool. Do you know Paul Keister?
Yeah.
So I asked Paul that question. This was a long time ago, an early episode of the podcast, and he thought for a long time, and his answer was profoundly personal. He said, "I wish I'd been better friend to my friends."
Oh, yeah.
Meaning, kind of letting the business overwhelm his life a little bit.
That's a way better answer.
Yeah. No, it's not. I like your answer too. I think that's a common one as well. What's the easy way for listeners, if they're curious, want to reach you? What's the easy way to find you on the internet?
On the interwebs, probably through LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, okay. Yeah. But you can spell the name just like it is on the name of the episode you're watching. Just look at your phone. It's Laura Fegley. You can look for her on LinkedIn. That's an easy way to reach her. You can reach me as always at danspodcast@mac.com. Like the Facebook page, facebook.com/DGMS podcast. Laura, thank you so much. I know this went fast, right? This was quick.
We're fast talkers, though. This is good. Yeah.
It's a long script crammed in. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Listeners, see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Cool. That was fun. Awesome.
It's the easiest thing in the world.